Hello everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. That's how YouTube keeps sending you more chilling stories like this. And now, let the night begin with Story 1. The House That Gave Out Full-Size Candy Bars. I still remember the moment my daughter's hand slipped from mine in that basement. The single bulb swinging overhead, illuminating row after row of small shoes lined up against the wall like a museum exhibit. 37 pairs. I counted them twice while my heart hammered against my ribs. And in the back corner I saw my own childhood sneakers, the ones with the red stripes I thought I'd lost at a sleepover in 1996. I moved back to Maple Street when my daughter Olivia turned 6. It felt right, you know, coming full circle, raising her in the same neighborhood where I'd grown up, where I'd trick-or-treated every Halloween, where everything felt safe and nostalgic. The houses looked exactly the same, just older like me. The big oak trees had grown thicker. The sidewalks had more cracks. But it was home. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about the Victorian house at the end of Maple Street. It had been famous for as long as I could remember. Mrs. Althea Chen, and yes, I know that's ironic given she was the only person of color on our very white street back then, gave out full-size candy bars every Halloween. Not the little fun-size ones. Full-size. Snickers, Milky Ways, Reese's Cups in the big orange packaging. As a kid, that house was the holy grail. You'd see lines of children stretching down her walkway, cutting through her yard, parents waiting on the sidewalk with their phones out, timing how long the wait was. But here's the thing I'd forgotten, or maybe I'd never really noticed as a child. The parents never went up to the door with their kids. They always waited at the sidewalk, watching carefully, calling their children back the moment they received their candy. I didn't think about it much when I first moved back. Just figured it was a neighborhood quirk, maybe something about property lines or Mrs. Chen's preference for space. Olivia's first Halloween on Maple Street, she came home with her pillowcase bulging, her face flushed with excitement. She dumped everything on the living room floor, and there it was, a full-size Twix bar with a small handwritten note attached. For the new girl on the street. Welcome home. Come visit anytime. Mrs. Chen. I thought it was sweet, neighborly, the kind of old-fashioned kindness you don't see much anymore. The following week, Olivia asked if she could visit Mrs. Chen after school. The old woman had apparently told her she had interesting things in her house that a curious little girl might like to see. Antiques, old toys, books. I almost said yes. I was standing at the front door, car keys in hand, ready to walk her down the street. But something stopped me. A feeling, distant and cold, like a hand pressed against the back of my neck. Instead, I told Olivia maybe another time, and I watched her face fall with disappointment. That night, I mentioned it casually to our neighbor Derek while taking out the trash. He was older, maybe in his 60s, had lived on Maple Street his entire life. His face changed when I mentioned Mrs. Chen's invitation. Not dramatically. Just a tightening around his eyes, a pause that lasted a half-second too long. I wouldn't let her go inside, he said quietly, glancing toward the Victorian house at the end of the street. Its lights were on, warm and yellow behind lace curtains. It looked like something from a postcard. Why not? I asked. Derek looked at me for a long moment like he was deciding something. Then he just shook his head. Just trust me. Keep Olivia outside if she visits. Never let her go in. He went back into his house before I could ask anything else. I tried to brush it off. Small towns have weird superstitions, old grudges, decade-long feuds over property lines. But the feeling lingered. That cold hand on my neck. Over the next few months, Olivia mentioned Mrs. Chen periodically. The old woman would wave to her from the porch when Olivia walked home from school. Sometimes she'd be outside watering her flowers, and she'd call out compliments about Olivia's backpack or her shoes. Always friendly, always warm, and always inviting her to come see the inside of the house sometime. I kept making excuses. We were busy. Maybe during summer break. Maybe next month. Halloween came around again. Olivia was 7 now, and she wanted to trick or treat with her school friends instead of me. I was hesitant, but their parents were going, and it was our neighborhood, and I couldn't keep her in a bubble forever. I gave her the usual safety talk, checked that her phone was charged, and watched her group head down the street in a cluster of zombies, witches, and superheroes. The doorbell rang steadily at our house until about 9 p.m. I was handing out candy, watching a movie, feeling that specific kind of peaceful exhaustion that comes with a good Halloween. Around 9:30, my phone rang. It was Olivia. She sounded embarrassed. "Mom, I left my backpack at Mrs. Chen's house. She invited us in to use the bathroom, and I set it down and forgot it. Can you walk down and get it? I don't want to go back. Everyone's already at Madison's house for the sleepover." My stomach dropped. "She let you inside?" "Just the entryway," Olivia said quickly. "We didn't go far, but I really need my backpack. My inhaler's in there." The inhaler. Damn it, I told her I'd get it and hung up. I stood in my hallway for a moment, staring at my reflection in the mirror by the door. I looked tired, older than 32. The cold hand was back on my neck. I walked down Maple Street slowly. The neighborhood was quieting down. Porch lights were clicking off. A few teenagers roamed in packs, their costumes half-hearted. The Victorian house glowed at the end of the street, every window lit, the porch decorated with carefully carved pumpkins and elegant autumn wreaths. It looked inviting, warm, safe. I knocked on the door. Mrs. Chen answered almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting. She was smaller than I remembered, her white hair pinned in a neat bun, her cardigan buttoned up to her throat. She smiled broadly when she saw me. "Ah, Olivia's mother. I wondered when you'd come. I have her backpack right here." She held it up, dangling from one thin hand. But she didn't hand it to me. Instead, she stepped back, gesturing into the house. "Come in for just a moment. I've been hoping to talk to you." Every instinct I had screamed no. But she was an elderly woman, a neighbor, someone who'd lived on this street longer than I'd been alive. I stepped inside. The entryway was exactly as I remembered from childhood. The same floral wallpaper, the same narrow table with the ceramic bowl for keys, the same mirror with the ornate gold frame. I had been here before. The memory surfaced slowly, like something rising from deep water. Mrs. Chen was watching me carefully. "You remember," she said softly. It wasn't a question. I think I came here once, trick-or-treating." "You came here several times," she corrected gently. She moved toward a doorway that led to the kitchen. "Your backpack is just downstairs. I was cleaning and I brought it down with me. Come." Downstairs. The basement. The cold hand on my neck became a fist. "I'll wait here," I said. Mrs. Chen turned back to me. Her smile was still there. But it had changed. It looked painted on now, like the smile on a doll. "I insist. It will only take a moment." Something in her voice made it clear this wasn't really a request. I followed her through the kitchen to a narrow door. She opened it, revealing wooden stairs descending into darkness. She flicked a switch and a single bulb illuminated the space below. My legs felt heavy as I descended. Each step creaked. The basement smelled like earth and something else. Something sweet and chemical, like preservatives. And then I saw them. The shoes. They were arranged on shelves along the concrete wall. 37 pairs. Children's shoes. Sneakers, Mary Janes, light-up shoes, tiny boots. each pair carefully cleaned and preserved, labeled with masking tape, names and dates. My daughter's hand slipped from mine. No, wait. My daughter wasn't here. I was alone. That was a memory of being 7 years old, standing in this same basement, holding Mrs. Chen's hand, looking at these same shelves but with fewer shoes. Do you remember now? Mrs. Chen's voice came from behind me on the stairs. I did. I remembered coming here on Halloween, being invited inside, being led downstairs to see something special. I remembered her asking me to take off my shoes, telling me there was a game we were going to play. I remembered the smell of chloroform on a cloth. And then nothing. A gap. And then waking up outside on her back porch, disoriented, my shoes gone, Mrs. Chen pressing a full-size candy bar into my hands and telling me what a good girl I'd been. How this was our special secret. I'd gone home. My parents asked where my shoes were. I couldn't remember. They bought me new ones. The memory faded, became dreamlike, unreal. Just another weird childhood moment that made no sense. But now, standing in her basement as an adult, I saw my old sneakers on the shelf. Red stripes. Size 3. The label read, Autumn, October 31st, 1996. That was my middle name, the one I never used. You came back, Mrs. Chen said from the stairs. She hadn't moved. They always come back. The children who grew up on this street, they move away, but they come back. And they bring their own children. I turned slowly. She was blocking the stairs, her small frame somehow filling the entire space. What did you do to us? Nothing harmful, she said, and she sounded genuinely offended. I would never hurt children. I love children. I just wanted to keep a piece of them. A memory. Something to hold on to. You drugged us. Just to sleep. Just for a few minutes while I took a small sample. Hair, nail clippings, shoes, items you wouldn't miss. Items that held your essence. She smiled that doll smile again. I've been collecting for 43 years, since I lost my own daughter. This house is full of children in a way. Their pieces, their energy. It keeps me company. I looked back at the shelves. 43 years. Hundreds of children. All of us with gaps in our memory, missing shoes, lost time we couldn't explain. Olivia's backpack isn't down here, I said quietly. No, Mrs. Chen agreed. It's upstairs. But I thought you should see this. I thought you should understand. You're one of my children too, Autumn. You always were. I moved then, fast, pushing past her on the stairs. She was old, fragile. She fell back against the wall but didn't try to stop me. I ran through the kitchen, through the entryway and out the front door into the cold October night. I called the police from my front lawn. I told them everything. They went to the house with a warrant 2 days later. They found the basement, the shoes, the labeled containers of hair and nail clippings, organized by year. They found journals documenting every child she'd collected since 1981, including detailed notes about each of us, our personalities, our fears, our dreams. She'd been watching all of us for decades. Mrs. Chen was arrested, evaluated, and declared mentally unfit for trial. She's in a facility now. The house is empty for sale, but no one will buy it. I had Olivia tested for everything. She's fine. Physically fine. Mrs. Chen apparently only got as far as having her remove her shoes in the entryway before Olivia's friends called for her. The backpack had been a lure meant for me. But here's what keeps me awake at night. I pulled out old photo albums from my childhood, looking through pictures from that era, trying to remember more. In one photo from Thanksgiving 1996, about a month after Halloween, I'm sitting at the dinner table with my family. I'm smiling. I'm wearing my new shoes. And in the reflection of the window behind me, barely visible, there's a figure standing in our backyard. Small, thin, white hair, watching. I've started noticing things around our current house. Small things out of place. A window I'm certain I locked, found open. Olivia's shoes moved from where she left them. And last week, I found a full-size Snickers bar on our porch with a note in shaky handwriting. I miss my children. The facility says Mrs. Chen hasn't left. They say she's been there every day since her admission. But I don't believe them, because yesterday Olivia came home from school and told me an old woman waved to her from across the street. A woman in a cardigan with white hair pinned in a bun. She looked lonely, Mom, Olivia said. She looked like she wanted to talk. I've started driving Olivia to school now. I watch her until she's inside. I check every lock in our house twice before bed. And I'm planning to move again far away from Maple Street. But deep down, I know it won't matter. Mrs. Chen said it herself. We always come back. Her children always come back. And now I understand that she didn't mean we come back to the house. She meant we can never really leave. We're in her collection forever, pieces of us preserved in that basement, in those journals, in her memory. And she's never going to let us go. Story 2. The couple in the matching costumes. The photograph is still on my phone. I've tried to delete it 100 times, but every time I do, it reappears in my camera roll, time-stamped October 31st, 1993. I wasn't born until 1997. My boyfriend Connor thought the matching costume idea was romantic. We'd been dating for 8 months, and Halloween was falling on a Saturday that year. Perfect for the big arts district party his co-worker was throwing. Connor found the costumes at a vintage shop downtown. Victorian morning clothes, complete with a black suit for him and a black lace dress for me. The shop owner, this ancient guy with yellow fingernails, seemed weirdly eager to sell them to us, practically giving them away. These are perfect for a couple, he'd said, running his fingers over the fabric. They were made for a couple. The clothes fit us perfectly. Too perfectly, actually. Connor's suit looked tailored to his exact measurements, and my dress needed no alterations at all, even though I'm tall and usually nothing fits right off the rack. We added pale makeup, darkened our eyes, and styled our hair in period-appropriate ways. When we looked in the mirror together, we looked authentically Victorian, like we'd stepped out of a daguerreotype. The party was in a converted warehouse, 3 floors of DJ sets, art installations, and hundreds of people in elaborate costumes. We arrived around 10 p.m., and the energy was perfect. Connor kept his arm around my waist, and we moved through the crowd, taking photos, dancing, drinking overpriced cocktails that glowed under black lights. Around 11, I saw them. They were standing near the back wall of the first floor, partially obscured by a cluster of people dressed as various memes. A couple in Victorian morning clothes. The same Victorian morning clothes. His black suit was identical to Connor's down to the pewter buttons. Her dress was a perfect match to mine, same lace pattern, same high collar. "Connor, look," I said, pointing. He followed my gaze and laughed. "Oh man, that's awkward. Should we go say hi? Do the whole nice costume thing?" But I couldn't move, because they weren't laughing or talking or drinking. They were just standing there, completely still, staring directly at us. Their faces were pale, paler than makeup should make skin look. Their eyes were dark hollows from across the room. "That's weird," Connor said, his smile fading. "They're really committing to the creepy vibe." I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture, more as a joke than anything. Something to laugh about later. But when I looked at the screen, the couple wasn't in the frame. I could see the back wall, the crowd, the art installation behind them. But the space where they'd been standing was empty. I looked up. They were still there in the same position, staring. "Did you see that?" I asked Connor. "They didn't show up in the photo." He took my phone and looked at the picture, then back at the couple. That's probably just the angle. Or the lighting messed with it. We decided to approach them. Maybe they were friends of the host, or maybe they'd also found costumes at the same vintage shop. We pushed through the crowd, but when we reached the back wall, they were gone. Just gone. The people who'd been standing near them didn't seem to notice anything unusual. When we asked if they'd seen the other Victorian couple, they looked at us blankly. "You two are the only ones in old-timey clothes I've seen," a guy dressed as a sexy referee said. We searched the first floor and found nothing. Connor suggested they'd probably gone upstairs. We climbed to the second floor where the music was darker, more industrial. The crowd was thinner here and the lighting was dimmer, all red and purple. And there they were again, standing at the far end of the room beside a fire exit. Same position, same hollow stairs. "Okay, this is officially creepy," Connor said. This time I walked toward them deliberately, keeping my eyes locked on them, refusing to look away. Connor followed. The couple didn't move, didn't blink. As we got closer, I could see details. The fabric of her dress was old, genuinely old, with the kind of wear that comes from decades, not a costume shop. His suit had moth holes near the shoulders. Their skin wasn't pale from makeup. It had a translucent quality like wax paper. We were maybe 10 feet away when someone stumbled between us, drunk and apologizing. I looked away for a half second. When I looked back, the couple was gone. The fire exit door was closed, and when Connor pushed it open, the stairwell was empty. "This isn't funny anymore," I said. My voice sounded thin. We went back downstairs. Found Connor's co-worker, asked if this was some kind of prank, if he'd hired actors to mess with people. He had no idea what we were talking about, told us we were too drunk, should hydrate. But we weren't drunk. We'd had maybe 2 drinks each. We decided to leave around 1 a.m. The couple had rattled us both, even though neither of us wanted to admit it. As we walked to the exit, I saw them one more time. 3rd floor. Standing in front of a window, silhouetted against the glass, watching us leave. I grabbed Connor's hand and pulled him faster. In the car, we didn't talk about it much. We tried to rationalize. Maybe they were performance artists. Maybe it was some immersive horror experience we didn't know about. Maybe we were both more tired than we realized. But when we got back to Connor's apartment, I opened my phone to look at the photos from the night. There were dozens. Us dancing, us with other party guests, selfies, group shots. And in every single photo in the background, sometimes barely visible, there they were, the couple in matching Victorian morning clothes. Standing still, staring directly at the camera, at us. In one photo, taken at the beginning of the night, they were visible through the warehouse window before we'd even gone inside. In another, a selfie Connor took in the car on the way to the party, they were visible in the back seat reflection. I scrolled faster, hands shaking. There they were in a photo from earlier that day when we were getting ready at Connor's place. Visible through his bedroom window. There they were in a photo from a week before when we went to brunch, standing across the street. "Connor," I whispered. "Connor, look at this." He looked. His face went white. We scrolled back further. A photo from our second date, 2 months into dating. There behind us at the movie theater. Another photo from a camping trip in July. Visible in the tree line behind our tent. They had been following us for months. "This has to be photoshopped," Connor said, but his voice had no conviction. "This has to be some kind of phone glitch." I opened my photo metadata. The pictures showed correct dates, correct locations. Everything was authentic, except for one photo, the one I'd taken of them at the party, the one where they hadn't appeared when I first looked. I opened it again. Now they were there. standing exactly where I'd seen them, staring at the camera. And the timestamp read October 31st, 1993, 11:37 p.m. My phone was made in 2019. That photo shouldn't exist. Connor grabbed his laptop and started searching. Victorian couple, Arts District warehouse. He found an old news article from 1993, archived and barely readable. Double murder at warehouse party, the headline read. A young couple, Amber Hartley and Blake Morrison, both 24, were found dead in the stairwell of a warehouse during a Halloween party. Both were dressed in Victorian mourning clothes. The bodies showed no signs of trauma, and the cause of death remains undetermined. Witnesses reported seeing the couple throughout the night but couldn't remember them speaking or interacting with anyone. There was a photo. Black and white, grainy, it was them. Exact same faces, same clothes, same hollow eyes. We read further. The article mentioned that the vintage clothing they'd been wearing was never identified or sourced. No costume shop had records of selling or renting such items. The clothes appeared to be genuinely from the 1890s, museum quality, but neither victim had any connection to historical societies or collections. The case was never solved. Their deaths were ruled unexplained. The warehouse was sold and renovated years later, the same warehouse where the party had been held tonight. Connor and I sat in his living room until the sun came up, not speaking, just staring at the photos. Every time I blinked, I saw them in my mind, standing still, watching. Around 6 a.m., Connor went to the bathroom. I heard him call my name, voice tight with panic. I found him standing in front of the mirror. He was pale, shaking. He pointed at his reflection. In the mirror behind him, barely visible in the bedroom doorway, were two figures in Victorian mourning clothes. I spun around. The doorway was empty, but when I looked back at the mirror, they were still there. Closer now. We left Connor's apartment. We didn't pack. We just ran. That was 3 months ago. We broke up 5 weeks later, not because we didn't care about each other, but because as long as we were together, they followed us. Every reflective surface, every photo, every window. The last time I saw Connor, he told me he was moving to Seattle, putting as much distance as possible between himself and the Arts District. I told him I was thinking about Portland. We didn't make plans to stay in touch, but last night I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a photo Connor posted from Seattle. He was at a coffee shop, smiling, trying to look normal, trying to move on. And in the window reflection behind him, two figures stood perfectly still, dressed in Victorian mourning clothes, watching. I picked up my phone to call him, to warn him that distance didn't matter. But my photo gallery opened instead to a new picture I didn't take. A selfie, time-stamped 5 minutes ago. It's me, in my apartment, and standing directly behind me, close enough to touch, are Amber and Blake. I don't look at mirrors anymore. I don't take photos, I keep my curtains closed. But I know they're still here. I can feel them watching. And I'm starting to understand that the matching costumes weren't our idea at all. We were always meant to see them, we were always meant to match. Because someday people will find us the same way we found them, standing still, staring, waiting for the next couple to put on the costumes. Story 3. I volunteered at a haunted house attraction. The actor in the basement never clocked out. That's what finally made me realize something was wrong. I was broke that October, 2 months behind on rent, so when I saw the Craigslist ad for scare actors at a pop-up haunted house downtown, I applied immediately. The pay was excellent, $25 an hour, cash, no tax forms, no background check. The location was some old office building on 4th Street that had been vacant for years. The production company was converting it into a multi-floor haunted attraction called Descend, and they needed bodies to hide in corners and jump out at people. I got hired over the phone, didn't even need an interview. The manager, a tired-sounding woman named Kyle, just told me to show up Friday at 6 p.m. for orientation. The building looked worse in person than I'd expected. 6 stories of brown brick and broken windows with plywood covering the ground floor entrance. A hand-painted banner reading "Descend, opening October 15th" hung crookedly across the front. I met the other scare actors in what used to be the lobby. About 15 of us, mostly college students and theater kids who needed extra cash. Kyle ran us through the basics. The haunted house had 5 levels, each with a different theme: asylum, carnival, forest, dollhouse, and the basement, which was supposed to be the most intense, the final scare before the exit. Our job was simple: stay in character, hide in designated spots, jump out at guests, never touch anyone, never break the 4th wall. "The basement is fully booked for actors," Kyle said, checking her clipboard. "So most of you will rotate through the upper floors. We're still finalizing the basement experience, so it's off limits until opening night unless you're assigned there." She handed out schedules. I was assigned to the asylum level, 2nd floor. My character was patient 7. Basically just wear a hospital gown, smear some fake blood on my face, and moan incoherently while dragging a chain. Easy money. Rehearsal started the next night. The building was creepy even with the lights on. The previous tenants had left in a hurry, apparently. There were still desks, filing cabinets, and paperwork scattered around. The production crew had dressed everything up with fog machines, strobe lights, and props, but underneath it all, you could feel the building's age, its emptiness. I got into costume and took my position in a fake hospital room on the 2nd floor. For 3 hours, I practiced my scare, waiting until guests walked past, then lunging out while rattling my chain and screaming. The other actors were good, professional. Everyone took it seriously. Around 9 p.m. during a break, I wandered downstairs to grab water from the cooler in the lobby. That's when I saw the basement door. It was at the end of a narrow hallway, past the bathrooms marked with yellow caution tape and a handwritten sign: "Basement, cast only, no entry." The door itself was old, metal, industrial. It didn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the haunted house. I heard something from behind it, a voice, low, rhythmic, almost like chanting. "Someone's rehearsing down there," said a voice behind me. I turned. It was another actor, a guy named Tyler who played a carnival barker on the 3rd floor. He was holding a cigarette even though we weren't supposed to smoke inside. "I thought Kyle said the basement wasn't ready yet," I said. Tyler shrugged. "Maybe they hired someone privately. I don't know. But I've heard them down there every night. Never comes up for breaks, never talks to anyone." "Them? How many actors are down there?" "Just one, I think, but it sounds like more." He took a drag and walked away. I stood there for another minute listening. The voice continued, muffled but constant. I couldn't make out words. It didn't sound like rehearsing. It sounded like praying or reciting something memorized. I went back upstairs, told myself it wasn't my business. But over the next few nights, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd hear the voice during breaks, always coming from the basement, always the same rhythm. None of the other actors seemed to know who was down there. Kyle dodged questions about it, saying the basement experience was a surprise and that we'd all see it on opening night. On the 3rd night of rehearsal, I made a mistake. I got curious. It was almost midnight. Most of the cast had left. I was supposed to be gone too, but I'd told Kyle I wanted to practice my scare a few more times. She'd waved me off, distracted by some lighting issue on the 4th floor. I waited until the building was quiet. Then I went downstairs. The caution tape across the basement door had been cut. The door was slightly ajar, just an inch, enough to let a thin line of light escape. I pressed my ear against the gap. The voice was clearer now. Definitely one person. Male, I thought, though the tone was strange, flat and emotionless. He was saying something repetitive, but I couldn't understand the language. It didn't sound like English. It didn't sound like any language I recognized. I pushed the door open. The stairs descended steeply into darkness. The light I'd seen was coming from far below, flickering like candlelight. The smell hit me immediately. Damp concrete, mildew, and something else. Something chemical and sweet like formaldehyde. I should have left. Every instinct told me to close the door and go home. But I'd spent 3 nights listening to that voice, wondering, and now I needed to see. I started down the stairs. The temperature dropped with each step. The walls were bare concrete, stained with water damage and old graffiti. The voice grew louder, echoing in the stairwell. The words sounded older now, ancient, like Latin or maybe Aramaic. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement opened into a large room. The production crew had done incredible work down here. It looked like a ritual chamber with symbols painted on the walls, chains hanging from the ceiling, and props scattered everywhere. Bones, candles, old books, jars of unidentifiable substances. And in the center of the room, facing away from me, stood the actor. He wore a long black robe, hood pulled up, covering his head completely. He was standing in front of a makeshift altar, hands raised, reciting the strange chant. His voice never wavered, never paused. "Hey!" I called out. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just curious." He didn't respond, didn't turn around, kept chanting. I stepped closer. "Do you work for the production company?" Kyle said the basement wasn't ready yet. Nothing, just the chant. I walked around to face him, feeling annoyed now. If this guy wanted to stay in character, fine, but ignoring people completely was rude. When I saw his face, or rather where his face should have been, I stopped breathing. The hood was empty. No face, no head. Just darkness. But the voice continued, coming from inside the hood, from the empty space, the words pouring out without lungs or lips. I stumbled backward. My foot caught on something, a chain, and I fell hard on the concrete floor. The impact jarred my teeth, sent pain shooting up my spine. The chanting stopped. The figure turned slowly to face me. The hood moved as if there were a head inside, tilting, observing. The darkness inside seemed to deepen, to pull at the edges of the fabric. And then it spoke. Not in the strange language, in English, in my voice. "You shouldn't be here." It sounded exactly like me, my cadence, my accent, my tone. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't look back. I took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the basement door, and didn't stop running until I was outside the building, gasping in the cold October air. I called Kyle from my car, told her I was quitting, that I couldn't do this anymore. She sounded confused, asked if something had happened. I hung up without answering. I didn't go back. I blocked their number. I needed the money, but not enough to face whatever was in that basement. But then I started seeing it. Not the figure, not exactly. But I'd catch glimpses of the black robe in reflections in store windows, in my rearview mirror while driving, just for a second, then gone. And I started hearing my own voice when I was alone, saying things I wasn't saying, whispering from the next room, reciting that chant in the middle of the night, waking me up because I thought I'd been sleep-talking, but my mouth was closed and the voice was coming from my closet. I went back to 4th Street 2 weeks after I quit. The haunted house had opened on schedule. There were lines around the block. I bought a ticket. I had to see the basement for myself during operating hours with lights and guests and staff. I had to prove to myself it was just props and actors and theater tricks. I went through the attraction. The asylum level was good. The carnival was impressive. The other floors were well designed, effectively creepy. And then we reached the basement. The guide led us down the same stairs I'd descended alone. The room looked different now, more polished, more theatrical. The symbols glowed under black lights. The altar was covered in fake skulls. And in the center of the room, exactly where I'd seen him, stood the robed figure. The other guests gasped and laughed nervously. The figure raised its hands and began to chant in that same ancient language. "This is the best actor they have," someone whispered behind me. "Look how still he stays." But I could see what they couldn't. The hood was still empty. The voice was still coming from nothing. And when the figure turned its head to look at me, just me, tracking my movement through the crowd, I saw the darkness inside ripple with recognition. After the tour ended, I found Kyle in the lobby. She was managing crowd control, looking exhausted but pleased with the turnout. "Who did you hire for the basement?" I asked. She looked at me, confused. "You came back? I thought you quit." "I did, but I need to know. Who is the actor in the basement?" Kyle frowned. "What are you talking about? We don't have an actor in the basement. That's animatronic. Cost us a fortune to rent. It's on a loop, motion activated." "That's not an animatronic." "Lauren, I'm busy. If you're not working, you need to leave." I grabbed her arm. "Kyle, I went down there during rehearsal. I saw it. That thing isn't a machine." She pulled away, annoyed now. "Security," she called out. "Can you escort this woman outside?" I left before security arrived, but as I walked out, I passed the basement entrance again. The door was open for the next tour group. I looked down the stairs. The figure was at the bottom, visible in the flickering light. It raised one hand and waved, slowly, deliberately. And I heard my own voice, distant but clear, echo up from below. "See you soon." That was 6 weeks ago. The haunted house has closed now. The building is empty again, boarded up, the banner taken down. I've tried to move on. I got a new job. I stopped going out at night. I avoid mirrors and reflective surfaces because sometimes in the glass I see the black robe standing behind me. But last night I woke up at 3 a.m. to find muddy footprints on my apartment floor, leading from my front door to my bedroom, to the foot of my bed. The door was still locked. The windows were sealed. No one should have been able to get in. The footprints were shaped like my shoes, my exact size, like something had been wearing my feet. And when I checked my phone, I had a new voicemail from my own number. I listened to it once. It was the chant, that ancient rhythmic chant, in my voice. The message was 23 minutes long. I didn't listen to all of it. But at the end, just before it cut off, I heard myself say, "The performance never ends. You're part of it now." I don't think I ever left that basement. I think something else walked out in my place. And now I'm starting to forget things. Small things like what I ate yesterday or what my mother's face looks like. I'm forgetting myself. Being replaced piece by piece. Sometimes when I speak, I hear an echo underneath my words. A second voice, older, emptier. I think I've become the actor, the one who never clocks out, the one who stays in character forever, and I'm starting to forget why that's supposed to scare me. Story 4, the Halloween party that never ended. The last thing I remember before everything changed was checking the time on my phone. 2:47 a.m. When I looked up, 3 weeks had passed and my roommate was dead. My roommate's name was Megan. We'd been living together for 2 years, ever since sophomore year at State. She was chaotic, spontaneous, the kind of person who'd wake you up at midnight with some wild idea. So when she burst into my room on October 28th saying she'd gotten us invites to an exclusive Halloween party at the Blackwell estate, I wasn't surprised. Megan collected experiences like that. "It's one of those secret parties," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "You need a password to get in. Someone from my film class knows the host. It's going to be incredible, Quinn, like once-in-a-lifetime incredible." I was hesitant. I had midterms coming up. The Blackwell estate was almost an hour outside the city in the middle of nowhere. But Megan had that look, the one that meant she was going with or without me, and I was her ride home if things went wrong. "Fine," I said, "but we're leaving by 2 a.m. I have a paper due Monday." We spent Halloween Day putting together costumes. Megan went as a 1920s flapper. I threw together a passable witch. Black dress, hat, some dark lipstick. We drove out around 9 p.m. following the directions Megan had written down. No GPS coordinates, just turn-by-turn instructions that led us deeper into farmland and forest. The Blackwell estate appeared suddenly, like something out of a Gothic novel. Massive 3 stories of stone and ivy, lit from within by what looked like candlelight. Cars lined the long driveway. Expensive cars, vintage cars, cars that looked like they'd been driven straight out of different decades. A man in a tuxedo stood at the entrance. He was tall, ageless in that way some people are, with dark eyes and an unsettling smile. "Password?" he asked. Megan leaned close and whispered something I couldn't hear. The man's smile widened. "Welcome to the Blackwell estate," he said, stepping aside. "Enjoy your evening. The party never truly ends here." I thought it was just a tagline, themed patter for atmosphere. Inside, the house was breathtaking. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, rooms flowing into rooms filled with people in elaborate costumes. The music was everywhere but nowhere. I couldn't identify a source, no DJ booth or speakers, just a constant shifting soundtrack that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Jazz, then swing, then something older, something that sounded like it had been recorded on wax cylinders. Everyone was dancing or talking in clusters, drinks in hand, cigarettes in long holders, the whole scene impossibly elegant. It felt like we'd walked into the 1920s, or maybe the 1890s, or maybe nowhere specific at all, just some idealized vision of decadence. "This is amazing," Megan said, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the bar. We drank, we danced, we talked to other guests, though I noticed something odd. No one mentioned where they were from, or what they did, or anything concrete about their lives. Every conversation stayed surface level, focused on the party, the house, the atmosphere. When I asked a woman in a Victorian ball gown where she lived, she just smiled and said, "Here, for now." Around midnight, I tried to check my phone. No signal. That wasn't surprising given how remote we were, but it was still unsettling. The battery was full, but the screen showed no time, no date, just the background image. "Put it away," Megan said. "Live in the moment." So I did. I danced with strangers. I drank cocktails I couldn't identify. I let the music pull me through rooms I didn't remember entering. The house seemed to expand, revealing new hallways, new parlors, new ballrooms that hadn't been there before. At some point, I realized I'd lost track of Megan. I searched the main rooms, the balconies, the gardens outside. The other guests were no help. When I asked if they'd seen a flapper girl, they just smiled and gestured vaguely toward other rooms. I found myself in a library on the 3rd floor. The music was quieter here. Bookshelves stretched to the ceiling filled with leather-bound volumes. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and sitting in a wingback chair reading was the man who'd greeted us at the door. "Lost someone?" he asked without looking up from his book. "My roommate, Megan. She's here somewhere. Everyone who enters stays. That's the nature of the party." "What do you mean, stays?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were darker up close, not brown or black, but something else. Empty. "The Blackwell estate is special," he said. "Time moves differently here. The party began in 1924 and it's never stopped. Guests arrive, guests join, and the celebration continues. Forever." I laughed nervously. "That's a great story, very committed to the theme, but seriously, have you seen my friend?" He returned to his book. "You'll understand soon." I left the library. My heart was beating too fast. The cocktails were catching up with me, making everything feel syrupy and slow. I pulled out my phone again. Still no signal. But now the battery was at 1%. It had been full 10 minutes ago. I needed to find Megan and leave. I searched for another hour. The house felt bigger now, impossible. I kept finding new rooms, a conservatory, a ballroom with a vaulted ceiling, a dining hall set for a feast that no one was eating. The guests smiled at me as I passed, but their smiles were fixed, unchanging. At 2 a.m. I found the front door, or what I thought was the front door. But when I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge, locked from the outside. "The party isn't over yet," said a voice behind me. A woman in a 1940s cocktail dress holding a martini glass. "You can't leave until it's over." "When does it end?" "It doesn't." I tried other doors. Every exit was locked. The windows wouldn't open. I started running, panic overtaking reason. I found a back staircase and descended into darkness, hoping it led to a basement exit. Instead, I found them. Bodies. Dozens of bodies. They were arranged on the floor of a massive underground chamber, dressed in costumes from every era. Flappers, zoot suits, poodle skirts, disco outfits, grunge fashion, modern clothes. All perfectly preserved, eyes closed, hands folded. They looked like they were sleeping. And among them, in the center of the room, was Megan. She lay on her back in her flapper dress, peaceful. Her skin too pale, her lips blue. I screamed and ran to her, shook her, tried to wake her up. Her body was cold. She wasn't breathing. "She's resting," said the man in the tuxedo. He had appeared behind me, silent as a shadow. "They all need rest eventually. The party demands so much energy." "What did you do to her?" "Nothing. She gave herself to the celebration. They all do eventually. The music, the dancing, the joy. It feeds the estate, and in return the estate gives them eternity. A perfect moment, frozen forever." I backed away from Megan's body, from all the bodies. "You're insane. This is murder. This is preservation. They chose to stay. The password, you see, is a contract. Once spoken, the guest agrees to remain until the party ends. And the party never ends." I ran, up the stairs, through hallways, past guests who were starting to look less real. More like wax figures, their movements repetitive, their conversations looping. The music was louder now, oppressive, drilling into my skull. I found a bathroom and locked myself inside. My phone was dead. My reflection in the mirror showed someone I barely recognized, eyes too wide, skin too pale, my witch costume now smudged and torn. I stayed there for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped making sense. Eventually, I heard knocking. "Quinn, are you in there?" Megan's voice. I opened the door. Megan stood in the hallway, looking perfect, alive, smiling. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Come on, they're about to serve dinner." "Megan, you were dead. I saw your body," she laughed. "What? No, I've been dancing. This party is incredible. Don't you feel it? Don't you feel how perfect everything is?" She took my hand. Her skin was cold. "I want to leave," I said. Her smile didn't change. "You can't leave. The party isn't over." I pulled away and ran again. I tried every door, every window. I screamed for help. Other guests watched with polite interest, but no one moved to help. They just kept dancing, kept drinking, kept celebrating. I don't know how long I was there, days, weeks. The sun never rose, the party never stopped. I watched guests collapse from exhaustion and get carried away, only to return hours later smiling, ready to dance again. I watched the same conversations repeat. I watched my own reflection grow paler, my eyes grow darker. And then one moment I was standing in the main ballroom, swaying to music I could no longer resist. And I checked my phone. It had somehow recharged, and the time read 2:47 a.m., October 31st. I blinked, and I was outside. I was standing on the lawn of the Blackwell estate in the cold pre-dawn air. My car was where we'd parked it. The house behind me was dark, empty, no lights, no music. It looked abandoned, like it had been for decades. I got in my car and drove. I drove until the sun came up, until I was back in the city, until I reached my apartment. My roommate was dead. That's what the police told me when I walked in. Megan had been found in the woods behind the Blackwell estate 3 days after Halloween. Her body showed no signs of trauma, no explanation for her death. They asked me where I'd been. I told them I didn't know, because I didn't. I'd lost 3 weeks. My phone showed November 21st, 3 weeks since Halloween. But to me, it had felt like one night. The police questioned me extensively. They wanted to know about the party, about the estate. I told them everything. They searched the property and found nothing. No bodies, no underground chamber, just an empty house that had been derelict for 40 years. They didn't believe me. I didn't blame them, but I found something they didn't. In my coat pocket, a small card embossed with elegant script. "Thank you for attending. The Blackwell estate looks forward to your return." I tried to move on. I went to therapy. I threw myself into schoolwork. I changed apartments, avoided Halloween, stopped drinking anything I couldn't watch being poured. But sometimes I hear the music, faint, distant, coming from nowhere. And when I hear it, I feel the pull, the desire to dance, to return, to slip back into that perfect, timeless moment. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sentence, handwritten. "The party never ends. You're always welcome back." And the worst part, I'm starting to want to go. Because life here feels wrong now. Too linear, too finite, too real. The party was perfect. The party was eternal. I'm afraid that one day I'll hear that music again and I won't be able to resist. I'll find myself driving out to the estate, speaking the password I never heard but somehow remember, walking through those doors one more time. And this time, I don't think I'll ever leave. Story 5. The trick-or-treater who wouldn't leave the police found the footprints 3 months later. 43 different trails leading from the cemetery to my front door and back again. Over and over in the mud that had been wet since October. They couldn't explain how no one had noticed them before. Halloween was supposed to be easy that year. My wife Ashley was working the night shift at the hospital, a regular Thursday for her, holiday or not, and I'd volunteered to hand out candy. We lived on a quiet street in the suburbs, the kind of neighborhood where families still decorated their houses and kids trick-or-treated until 9 p.m. at the latest. I'd bought 5 bags of assorted candy, put on a horror movie, and settled in. The doorbell started ringing around 6. I handed out candy to Power Rangers, princesses, zombies, superheroes. Everyone was polite. Everyone said thank you. By 9:30, the doorbell had stopped, and I'd gone through 4 bags. I turned off the porch light, the universal signal that Halloween was over at our house, and poured myself a drink. At 10:47 p.m., someone knocked on the door. Not the doorbell, the knocker. Heavy, deliberate, 3 slow knocks. I assumed it was older kids, teenagers trying to squeeze out a few more candy bars. I grabbed the last bag and opened the door. A child stood on my porch. I say child, but I couldn't tell you if it was a boy or a girl. They wore a classic sheet ghost costume. White sheet, 2 eye holes cut out, dragging on the ground. The kind of costume kids wore in the 1950s before everything became store-bought plastic. They held a pillowcase in one small hand, extended toward me. No parent was visible. No group of friends. Just the kid. Alone. Silent. "Hey, buddy," I said. "It's a little late, but here you go." I dropped a handful of candy into the pillowcase. The child didn't move, didn't say thank you, just stood there, arms still extended. "That's all I've got," I said, trying to keep my voice friendly. "Happy Halloween." I closed the door and immediately heard the knock again. 3 times. Slow. I opened the door. The kid was in the exact same position, arm extended, pillowcase open. The candy I'd just given them was gone. The bag was empty again. "Did you eat that already?" I asked, confused. No response. I looked past them toward the street. No cars, no parents. Our neighborhood was well lit, and I could see the whole block. Empty. "Where do you live?" I asked. "Do you need me to call someone?" The kid just stood there. Something about it was starting to feel wrong. The stillness, the silence, the way the sheet didn't move, not even in the October wind that was rattling the trees on our lawn. "I'm sorry, I'm out of candy," I said firmly. "You should head home." I closed the door and locked it. 3 slow knocks. I looked through the peephole. The kid was still there, same position. I watched for a full minute. They didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't lower their arm. I walked away from the door and sat back down on the couch. Probably some kid playing a prank, I told myself. They'd get bored and leave. 3 slow knocks. I tried to ignore it, turned up the volume on the TV. 3 slow knocks. This continued for an hour. Every few minutes, 3 knocks. I stopped answering. I left all the lights on, kept the TV loud, and tried to pretend I couldn't hear it. At midnight, I texted Ashley. "Is your shift over soon?" She replied, "Not until 7 a.m. What's wrong?" I didn't want to worry her. "Nothing. Just missing you." 3 slow knocks. At 1 a.m., I called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. A child in a costume had been knocking on my door for hours, wouldn't leave, appeared to be alone. The dispatcher said they'd send someone to check it out. I watched through the peephole. The kid was still there, still in the same position. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers got out and approached my house. I opened the door before they could knock. "Are you the homeowner?" the older officer asked. "Yes, I called about the..." I stopped. The porch was empty. The kid was gone. The officers looked at me, then at the empty porch, then back at me. "About the child that was knocking?" the younger officer prompted. "They were here," I said, "right here, for hours." The older officer shone his flashlight around the porch, the yard. "I don't see anyone." "I'm not crazy, they were standing right here since 10:47. The younger officer walked around the side of the house, checking the yard, came back shaking his head. "No one around, no kids on the street at all." The older officer gave me a look I recognized, the "is this guy drunk or mentally unstable" look. "Maybe they ran when they saw us coming," he said. "Kids do that sometimes. If they come back, call us again." They left. I stood on my porch, looking up and down the empty street. Nothing. No movement, no sound. I went back inside and locked the door. At 1:47 a.m., 3 slow knocks. I looked through the peephole. The kid was back. Same spot, same position. I didn't open the door. I went upstairs to my bedroom, put in earplugs, and tried to sleep. But even through the earplugs, I could hear it. Or maybe feel it. 3 knocks, rhythmic, endless, reverberating through the house like a heartbeat. I finally fell asleep around 4 a.m. from pure exhaustion. I woke up to Ashley shaking me. Sunlight was streaming through the windows. "Garrett, what the hell is this?" she asked. I followed her downstairs. She pointed at the front door. On the other side of the glass, pressed against the window, was a small handprint, just one, a child's hand, fingers spread, pressed against the glass from the outside. "I don't know," I said. "We checked the security camera footage from last night. Our doorbell had a camera built in." I pulled up the feed on my phone. At 10:47 p.m., the video showed the kid appearing on our porch, not walking up, just appearing between frames, suddenly there. For the next 8 hours, the video showed the kid knocking. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 3 slow knocks, over and over. The kid never moved otherwise, never lowered their arm, never turned away. At exactly 7:02 a.m. between frames, they disappeared. "This is some kind of technical glitch," Ashley said, but her voice was uncertain. "I saw them," I said. "They were real." We cleaned the handprint off the door. Ashley had to get some sleep before her next shift. I stayed up, watching the street, waiting. That night at 10:47 p.m., 3 slow knocks. I didn't answer. For 4 hours, the knocking continued. I sat in the living room, lights off, watching through the peephole. The kid never moved, never tired. At 3 a.m., I heard something different. Not knocking, scratching. I looked through the peephole. The kid was dragging their hand down the door. Slowly. Over and over, long, deliberate scratches. Ashley woke up and came downstairs. "Garrett, we need to call someone." "Who?" "The police didn't help. What are we supposed to say?" "A priest, a medium, I don't care. This isn't normal." The scratching stopped at sunrise. When I opened the door, there were grooves in the wood, deep grooves like something had been scratching at it for hours with broken nails. We called a locksmith and had a steel security door installed. It cost us $2,000 we didn't have. That night at 10:47 p.m., 3 slow knocks on the new steel door. I stopped going to work. I stopped sleeping properly. Ashley moved in with her sister, said she couldn't handle it anymore, said I needed help. Every night, 10:47 p.m. to sunrise, the kid stood on my porch and knocked. I started recording everything, documenting it, posting it online. Some people believed me, most didn't. 6 weeks after Halloween, I finally worked up the courage to open the door while the kid was there. It was 2 a.m. They'd been knocking for 3 hours. I unlocked the door and pulled it open fast. The kid stood there, arm extended, pillowcase open. Up close, I could see the sheet was old, stained, yellowed with age. The eye holes were too perfectly cut, too circular, too empty. "What do you want?" I whispered. The kid tilted their head. The movement was wrong, too fluid, like there was no skull underneath the sheet. And then they spoke, voice small and hollow. "Trick or treat." "I don't have any candy." "Trick or treat." "I told you, and I don't." "Trick or treat." Over and over, the same 2 words, the voice never changed pitch or volume. I slammed the door and called the police again. They came, found nothing, looked at me with pity. 2 months after Halloween, I hired a private investigator. I gave him all the footage, all the documentation. He did research. He found something. 40 years ago, on Halloween 1984, a child went missing in our neighborhood, 7 years old. Last seen trick-or-treating alone, wearing a sheet ghost costume. The child's body was found 3 days later in the cemetery 6 blocks from my house. Cause of death: exposure. The child had gotten lost, wandered into the cemetery, and died of hypothermia. The child's name was Cameron Blake. Their last known location before death was my street. They'd been knocking on doors, asking for help. But it was late, and no one answered. "You're the first person to open the door," the investigator said. "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but maybe they've been waiting for someone to answer." That night at 10:47 p.m., I opened the door before the knock came. The kid was standing there, arm extended. "I'm sorry no one helped you," I said. "I'm sorry you died alone." The kid lowered their arm for the first time in months. "I can't give you candy," I continued, "but I can walk you home, to the cemetery. Would that help?" The kid tilted their head. Then slowly they turned and walked down my porch steps. I followed them. down my street, through the neighborhood, toward the old cemetery. They walked slowly, the sheet dragging on the ground behind them. I stayed several feet back. At the cemetery gates, they stopped, turned back to look at me. "Thank you," the voice said, small, quiet, and then they walked through the gates and disappeared between the headstones. I haven't heard the knocking since. That was 3 months ago, but the police came by last week. They'd been investigating an unrelated case and happened to walk through the cemetery. That's when they found the footprints in the mud. 43 trails leading from a small grave marked Cameron Blake, 1977-1984, to my front door and back. Over and over, months of footprints perfectly preserved in mud that should have dried or been disturbed. The police asked if I knew anything about it. I told them I didn't, but I do. I know that Cameron knocked on my door 43 times before I finally answered. I know that sometimes the dead just need someone to acknowledge them, someone to walk them home. I still live on that street. I still hand out candy every Halloween, and I never turn off the porch light before midnight, because I learned something that year. Sometimes the trick-or-treaters who come late aren't looking for candy. They're looking for something else: recognition, closure, a way home. And now, every Halloween around 10:47 p.m., I leave my door open and wait, just in case someone else needs help finding their way back. Story 6. The pumpkin patch at the edge of town. The photos on my phone show me standing in that pumpkin field, smiling, holding hands with someone who has my girlfriend's face but isn't her. I can see it in the eyes. My girlfriend Brittany's eyes were hazel. The person in the photos has brown eyes, completely brown, no variation in color. Brittany found the place on Instagram. She was always doing that, finding aesthetic little spots for us to visit, places that looked perfect in photos. Rustic cafes, sunflower fields, abandoned buildings covered in vines. The algorithm fed her exactly what she wanted: curated natural beauty, small-town charm, autumn vibes. The Harmon family pumpkin patch appeared on her feed in early October. The photos were stunning. Endless rows of orange pumpkins stretching toward a tree line, a weathered barn in the background, hay bales arranged artistically, golden hour light making everything glow. The account had maybe 200 followers. All the photos looked professional, and the location tag just said Harmon Farm, 40 miles west. "We have to go," Brittany said, showing me her phone. "Look how beautiful this is." I was skeptical. 40 miles is kind of far for pumpkins. It's not about the pumpkins, it's about the experience, the photos. "Come on, it'll be fun, just you and me." She was right. We'd both been stressed, busy with work, barely seeing each other outside of our apartment. A day trip sounded nice. We picked the last Saturday in October. The directions were vague. The Instagram account had responded to Brittany's DM with just a pin drop and a note: "Follow the road until you see the sign. Can't wait to meet you." No website, no phone number, but that felt authentic, charming, old-fashioned. We left around noon. The drive took us through suburbs, then farmland, then forests. The roads got narrower, less maintained. My phone's GPS kept losing signal, but Brittany had screenshots of the directions, so we kept going. The sign appeared suddenly. Harmon Family Pumpkin Patch, open daily, fresh cider. We turned down a gravel driveway that wound through trees for maybe a quarter mile. When we emerged into the clearing, I understood why the Instagram photos looked so perfect. The place was gorgeous, exactly like the pictures. The pumpkin field stretched out in neat rows. The barn stood weathered and picturesque in the distance. Hay bales were arranged in photogenic clusters. And standing near the entrance, waving, was a family of 4. A man, a woman, and 2 teenage kids. "Welcome," the man called out as we parked. He was maybe 50, wearing overalls and a flannel shirt that looked deliberately styled. The woman beside him wore a plaid dress and boots. The kids, a boy and a girl, smiled widely identically. "Thanks for coming all this way," the woman said. "We're the Harmons. Please look around, pick as many pumpkins as you'd like." "The photos on Instagram don't do this place justice," Brittany said, already pulling out her phone. "Oh, we don't actually run the Instagram," the man said. "That's just friends sharing, word of mouth, you know. But we're glad it brought you here." Something about that felt off. The account had responded to Brittany's message directly, but I let it go. The family was incredibly welcoming. They offered us hot apple cider from a thermos, showed us around the property, pointed out the best pumpkins. They asked about us, where we were from, how we'd met, what we did for work. They listened intently, nodding, smiling. "You two seem very close," the woman said. "That's lovely." "How long have you been together?" 3 years, Brittany said, leaning into me. "Wonderful. You know, we have a special tradition here. In the back field, we have rare pumpkins. White ones, blue ones, ones you won't find anywhere else. We only show them to special visitors. Would you like to see?" Brittany's eyes lit up. "Absolutely." We followed the family past the main field, through a line of trees into a smaller clearing. They were right. The pumpkins here were unusual. White ones that looked almost luminescent. Blue-green ones with strange mottled patterns, some that were nearly black. "These are incredible," Brittany said, snapping photos. "Pick whichever ones you'd like," the man said. "No charge. Our gift to you." We spent the next hour in that field. The Harmons stayed nearby, talking to us, asking more questions. At some point, I realized they kept steering the conversation back to us. Our relationship, our families, our plans for the future. "Do you think you'll get married?" the teenage girl asked suddenly. Brittany laughed, a little uncomfortable. "Maybe someday." "What about kids?" the boy added. "We haven't really." "Do you love each other?" the woman interrupted. The questions had shifted. They'd become too personal, too probing. I glanced at Brittany, saw my own discomfort reflected in her face. "We should probably head back," I said. "It's getting late." The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the field. I checked my phone for the time, but it showed no signal and a frozen clock. "Oh, you can't leave yet," the man said. His smile hadn't changed, but something in his tone had. "We haven't had cider in the barn. We really need to get going," I said more firmly. "We insist," the woman said. "It's tradition. All our special visitors share cider with us in the barn. It's how we say thank you." They were moving closer, forming a semicircle around us, not threatening exactly, but deliberate. "That's very kind," Brittany said, her voice tight. "But we have a long drive." "Just 10 minutes, the man said. "Then you can go." I grabbed Brittany's hand. "No, thank you, we're leaving now." We started walking back toward the main field, toward our car. The family followed, matching our pace. "You don't want to be rude," the woman called out. "We've been so welcoming." We walked faster. The tree line seemed farther away than I remembered. The sun was setting too quickly, the shadows too dark. "Brittany, do you have the car keys?" I asked. She checked her pockets, her bag. "I thought you had them." We both stopped. I patted my pockets. Nothing. "Looking for these?" The teenage boy held up our car keys, dangling them from his finger. "How did you? You left them on the hay bale," he said. "When you were taking photos. We were just keeping them safe." He didn't hand them over, just stood there, smiling. "Give them back," I said. "Come have cider first," the man said. "Then we'll give them back." Brittany's hand tightened on mine. I looked around. We were surrounded. The family had spread out, blocking paths, moving closer. "Fine," I said. 10 minutes, then we go." The barn was old, drafty, lit by kerosene lanterns that cast flickering shadows. Inside, there was a table set up with mugs and a large ceramic pitcher. The Harmons gestured for us to sit on hay bales arranged around the table. "This is a very old tradition," the woman said, pouring cider into 2 mugs. "Older than this farm, older than this town." "What kind of tradition?" Brittany asked. "Hospitality," the man said, "and exchange." They handed us the mugs. The cider smelled off, too sweet with an undercurrent of something chemical. "We're not thirsty," I said. "Drink," the teenage girl said. Her smile was gone now. "What's in this?" Brittany asked. "Just cider," the woman said, "and a few other things, to help with the transition." "Transition to what?" The man leaned forward. "You don't belong to each other anymore. You belong to the farm now, to us. We need what you have. Your youth, your love, your life, and in exchange, you'll take our place. You'll be the new Harmons. You'll welcome the next visitors. You'll continue the cycle." I stood up, pulling Brittany with me. "You're insane. We're leaving." But the doors were closed, locked. I hadn't seen anyone close them. "You don't understand," the woman said. "We're offering you immortality, a purpose. The farm sustains us. We sustain the farm. And when new visitors come, visitors like you, young and in love, we pass the burden on." I looked at the family more closely. Their skin under the lantern light looked waxy, artificial. Their movements were too synchronized, and their eyes, I hadn't noticed before, but their eyes were all completely brown, no variation, like doll eyes. "How long have you been here?" Brittany whispered. "Since 1987, the man said. "Before that, it was the Pritchards. Before that, the Westons. The farm is always here. The family changes. That's the cycle." I grabbed one of the lanterns and threw it at the door. The glass shattered, kerosene spilling, but nothing caught fire. The Harmons didn't move, just watched. "Violence won't help," the woman said. "Just drink the cider. It'll be easier." Brittany ran for a window, tried to break it. The glass wouldn't crack. She screamed and I joined her, both of us yelling for help, though we were miles from anyone. The Harmons waited patiently. We spent hours in that barn trying to escape, trying to break through walls, doors, windows. Nothing worked. Eventually, exhausted, we collapsed on the hay bales. "Why us?" Brittany asked. "You're perfect," the teenage boy said. "Young, healthy, in love. Strong enough to sustain the farm for decades. What happens if we don't drink the cider? You'll die here," the man said simply. "Starve eventually. Then we'll have to find someone else. It's wasteful." Morning light started filtering through cracks in the barn. The Harmons hadn't moved all night, hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, just watched us. I whispered to Brittany, "If we pretend to drink it, maybe we can—" "We'll know," the woman interrupted, though I'd barely made a sound. "We'll know if you pretend." Around noon, Brittany started crying. Not loud sobs, just silent tears. "I don't want to die here," she whispered. The Harmons brought the mugs back to us. "Last chance," the man said. "Drink and you'll live. You'll become us. You'll wait here for the next pair. In 30 or 40 years, you can pass it on." That's not so long. I looked at Brittany, she looked at me, and in that moment I saw her break, saw her reach for the mug. "Brittany, don't—" She drank, all of it, fast. Then looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, I can't die here, please. Drink it. Stay with me, please." The Harmons smiled. I don't remember drinking. I remember Brittany holding the mug to my lips, crying, begging. I remember the taste. Sweet and bitter and wrong. I remember the room spinning, the Harmons' voices overlapping, chanting something in a language I didn't know. Then nothing. I woke up outside the barn. It was sunset again. Or maybe a different sunset, I couldn't tell. Brittany was next to me, asleep. Our car was parked nearby, keys in the ignition. I shook Brittany awake. "Are you okay?" She nodded, disoriented. "What happened?" "I don't know. Let's just leave now." We ran to the car and drove. The gravel road seemed shorter this time. Within minutes, we were back on the main road. We didn't speak for the entire drive home. Back at our apartment, we tried to make sense of it. We checked our phones. The photos were all there, but the timestamps were wrong. It had been 2 days since we'd left for the pumpkin patch. 2 days we couldn't account for. Brittany looked at me and I looked at her, and we both knew something was wrong. I noticed it first with her eyes. They'd been hazel. Now they were brown, completely, uniformly brown. She noticed mine. "Garrett, your eyes." I ran to the bathroom mirror. Brown, just like hers. Over the following weeks, we changed. Small things. Our skin felt wrong, too smooth, too waxy. Food tasted like nothing. We didn't get tired, didn't need to sleep, but we pretended to, because what else could we do? And the worst part, we started getting messages, DMs on Instagram from people asking about the Harmon family pumpkin patch. "Is it still open? Can you send directions?" The photos look amazing. Brittany and I tried to ignore them, but the urge grew stronger, the need to respond, to invite them, to welcome them. Last week we drove back. We didn't plan to. We just found ourselves on that road, following those directions, pulling into that gravel driveway. The farm looked the same, but the barn was empty. No Harmons. Just a note on the table. "Thank you. It's your turn now." Brittany and I stood in that field holding hands, looking at the pumpkins, and we understood. We are the Harmons now. We'll wait here. We'll welcome visitors. And when the right couple comes, young, in love, perfect, we'll offer them cider in the barn, and the cycle will continue. If you see photos of a beautiful pumpkin patch online, perfect and glowing and almost too good to be true, don't go. Because the Harmons are waiting, and they might look like us now. Story 7. I bought a vintage Halloween mask at an estate sale. The mask is in a box under my bed now, wrapped in layers of plastic and duct tape. I can still feel it sometimes at night, pressing against my face even though it's 10 feet away. The doctors say it's psychosomatic, phantom sensation. But I know better. The mask isn't done with me. I collect vintage Halloween decorations. It's been my hobby for about 5 years. Started as a nostalgia thing, remembering the decorations from my childhood, the paper skeletons and plastic pumpkins my parents would put up. Then it became an obsession. I spent weekends driving to estate sales, antique shops, flea markets, hunting for intact pieces from the 60s and 70s. The estate sale was in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, an older part of the city where the houses were brick and the trees were massive and overgrown. The listing mentioned vintage holiday items, which usually meant a gold mine for collectors like me. I arrived early, stood in line with other vultures waiting to pick through a dead person's belongings. When the doors opened, I made straight for the basement, where the holiday stuff was supposedly stored. And there it was, on a shelf half hidden behind boxes of Christmas lights, a devil mask. It was beautiful, clearly from the 1960s, made of thick rubber with molded horns, exaggerated features and hand-painted details. The eyes were black and glossy. The mouth was open in a leering grin showing painted teeth. It was in perfect condition. No cracks, no fading, no deterioration. I picked it up carefully. The inside was lined with fabric, soft and worn. Someone had worn this a lot. "You like that?" A voice behind me made me jump. An elderly man, maybe 80, thin and pale. He'd been sitting in a chair in the corner of the basement. I hadn't noticed him. "It's incredible," I said. "How much?" "Take it," he said. "Free." "Free? This is worth at least... Just take it, please." There was something desperate in his voice. I wanted out of this house. I should have asked questions, should have wondered why he was so eager to get rid of something so valuable. But collectors don't look gift horses in the mouth. I took the mask, paid for a few other items upstairs to avoid looking suspicious, and left. At home, I examined it more closely under good light. The craftsmanship was exceptional. The horns curved naturally. The rubber still had flexibility. The paint was vibrant. I took photos for my collection spreadsheet, posted them in a few vintage Halloween collector groups online. People were jealous. One guy offered me $400 for it on the spot. I wasn't selling. My friend Austin was throwing a Halloween party that weekend. Costume mandatory, themed cocktails, the works. I decided to wear the mask. It would be ironic retro, a conversation piece. The mask fit perfectly, better than perfectly. It molded to my face like it had been custom made for me. I could see clearly through the eye holes. I could breathe easily. It was comfortable in a way masks usually aren't. I wore it to the party with a black suit and red tie. Simple devil costume. People loved it. I got compliments all night. "Where did you find that? That looks so authentic." "It's kind of creepy up close." Around 11 p.m. I tried to take it off to drink more easily. It wouldn't budge. I pulled gently, then harder. The edges where the mask met my skin felt sealed, not glued, not sticky, just sealed, like the rubber had fused with my face. "Hey Austin, can you help me with this?" I asked. He came over, grabbed the edge of the mask near my jaw and pulled. Nothing. He pulled harder. I felt pain, sharp and immediate, like he was trying to peel my actual skin off. "Dude, stop," I said, "on that hurts." "It's not coming off," Austin said, stepping back. "What is this thing made of?" I went to the bathroom and tried again in front of the mirror. I could see where the mask ended and my skin began, but when I touched the seam, it felt uniform, continuous. I pulled until my eyes watered, until I thought I might tear my face open. The mask didn't move. "This isn't funny," I said to my reflection. The devil face stared back, grinning. I left the party early, told Austin I'd figure it out at home. Drove back with my hands shaking on the wheel. At home, I tried everything. Soap, oil, ice to shrink the rubber, heat to expand it. I pulled until I bled around the edges. Nothing worked. At 2 a.m., I called a 24-hour nurse hotline, explained the situation. They told me to go to the emergency room. The ER doctor looked at me like I was insane. "You're saying you can't remove a Halloween mask?" "I'm saying it's stuck to my face." They tried. 3 different doctors using various techniques: medical adhesive remover, lubricants. At one point, they considered cutting it off, but they couldn't get scissors under the edge. There was no gap between the mask and my skin. "I've never seen anything like this," the attending physician said. "The material seems to have..." "I don't know, bonded with your epidermis. We might need to consult a dermatologist or a surgeon." They admitted me for observation. I spent Halloween night in a hospital bed wearing a devil mask, watching nurses whisper to each other outside my room. In the morning, something had changed. I felt different. Lighter, but also not myself, like I was floating slightly outside my body, and I had lost time. The clock said 7 a.m. I remembered it being 2 a.m., 5 hours gone. The nurses said I'd been asleep, but I didn't remember sleeping. They released me that afternoon with instructions to follow up with the specialist. I went home exhausted and crashed on my couch. I woke up at 3 p.m. the next day, but my neighbor later told me they'd seen me leave my apartment at midnight, seen me get in my car and drive away. I had no memory of it. I checked my car. There were 47 miles on the odometer that I couldn't account for. Mud on the tires, scratches on the hood. That night, I set up my phone to record myself sleeping. I needed to know what was happening during the blackouts. The next morning, I watched the footage. At 1:34 a.m., I sat up in bed, got dressed, walked out of my apartment. The video continued recording in my empty bedroom until the battery died at 6 a.m. I came back at 7:12 a.m. The next clip, from my phone in my pocket, showed me walking through a residential neighborhood I didn't recognize, looking into windows, just standing outside houses, watching people sleep. I was terrified. I started locking my bedroom door from the inside, hiding my car keys, setting alarms. But every night I'd wake up to find the door unlocked, the keys back in their spot, evidence of time I couldn't remember. I went back to the estate sale house. I needed to find that old man, needed to ask him what the hell this mask was. The house was empty, foreclosed according to the sign out front. I broke in through a basement window. Inside, I found his journal, just sitting on a shelf in the basement like he'd left it for me. The entries went back decades. Different handwriting at different times, but all describing the same thing, the mask. It had been passed down, sold, given away, stolen. It always found new wearers. One entry from 1983, I can't control what it makes me do. Last night I hurt someone. I don't remember it, but I saw the blood on my hands. God help me. Another from 1995, it's been 6 months. I can't get it off. I'm not myself anymore. I'm something else. Something that wears my face during the day and takes it off at night. The most recent entry was dated 3 weeks before I bought the mask. I'm too old for it now. It's looking for someone younger, someone with more years to use. I'm going to put it in the sale. I'm sorry to whoever finds it, but I can't do this anymore. I ran home and tried again to remove the mask. I used a knife this time, trying to cut it away. But when the blade touched the rubber, I felt pain in my actual face, like cutting my own skin. Blood seeped from under the edge of the mask, but the mask itself remained undamaged. The blackouts got worse. I started waking up in strange places, in parks, in alleys, once in someone else's house, standing over their bed while they slept. I saw a priest. He tried an exorcism. It didn't work. The mask just grinned through the holy water. I saw a surgeon. He refused to operate. I can't remove something that's integrated with your nervous system. It's like it's part of you now. And it was. I could feel it. The mask wasn't just on my face. It was in my face. I could feel its thoughts mixing with mine, its desires bleeding into my consciousness. It wanted to hurt people, to frighten them. To stand in their homes while they slept and watch them, feeding on their fear. That's what it had been doing all those decades with all those wearers, using their bodies at night to fulfill its purpose. I locked myself in my apartment, chained my door, threw away my keys. I wouldn't let it use me anymore, but it was stronger than me. One night I woke up outside, 3 miles from my apartment, with no memory of how I got there. My door was still locked and chained from the inside. I'd either sleepwalked through walls or the mask had found a way to make me bypass physical barriers. I couldn't live like this. I considered suicide. But I was afraid of what the mask would do if I died. Would it just move to someone else? Would it trap my consciousness inside forever? Instead, I went back to the estate sale house one more time. I searched until I found what I was looking for, instructions written in the journal's back pages. To remove the mask, you must find its original owner, the first person who wore it. Return it to them, and it will release you. But the mask was from the 1960s. Whoever first wore it was probably dead. I researched for weeks, traced the mask's history through the journal entries, through old Halloween party photos, through obituaries. I found the name, Thomas Pike, He'd bought the mask in 1963 from a costume shop in Brooklyn that no longer existed. Thomas Pike died in 1989, but I found his grave. I drove 6 hours to a cemetery in upstate New York. I found his headstone, small and weathered, and I sat down in front of it wearing the mask that had ruined my life. "I'm returning this," I said to the grave. "Take it back." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I felt it. A loosening, a release. The mask began to peel away from my face, slowly, painfully, but it was coming off. I pulled it free. My face underneath was raw, scarred like I'd been burned, but the mask was off. I tried to leave it there on the grave, but my hand wouldn't let go. The mask was stuck to my palm now, the rubber warming, tightening. I panicked and threw it into the open grave, started shoveling dirt on top of it with my hands. As I buried it, I heard something, a voice thin and distant coming from under the earth. "Thank you." I don't know if it was Thomas Pike or the mask itself or my imagination. I drove home. My face healed slowly. The scars faded to pale lines. I should have felt relief. Freedom. But 2 weeks later, I woke up to find a box on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was the mask, clean and perfect, wrapped in tissue paper, and a note. "You can't bury me, I always come back. But I'm grateful you tried, so I'll give you a choice. Keep me, and I'll only use you once a year. Just Halloween night. That's all I need. The rest of the time, you're free." I knew I should destroy it. Burn it, throw it in the ocean, but some part of me, maybe the part that still remembered how perfectly it had fit, how powerful I'd felt wearing it, considered the offer. 1 night a year. That's not so bad. Other people go to parties, drink, make mistakes. I'd just lose 1 night. I put the mask under my bed, haven't worn it since. But Halloween is coming again. And I'm starting to think about how it felt, how complete, how right. I tell myself I'll resist, but when I look in the mirror now, sometimes my reflection is wearing the mask, even though I'm not, and it's smiling, patient, knowing I'll put it on again eventually. Because that's the thing about masks. Once you know how well they fit, it's hard to live without them. Story 8. The Halloween night I worked as a rideshare driver. I've deleted that rideshare app from my phone 6 times. It keeps reinstalling itself, and every few days I get a notification. New message from Morgan. But when I open the app, the message thread is empty, just the timestamp. 2:47 a.m., October 31st, and a profile picture that shows nobody, just an empty back seat. I needed money for rent. That's the only reason I was working Halloween night. My usual job barely covered expenses, and I'd signed up to drive for a rideshare app to make extra cash. Halloween was supposedly one of the best nights for tips. Drunk people going to parties, drunk people coming home from parties, desperation rides at 2 a.m. when the buses stopped running. I started my shift at 8 p.m. Most of the rides were predictable. Groups of college kids in matching costumes headed downtown. Tired parents picking up teenagers from parties. One guy dressed as a hot dog who threw up in my back seat around midnight. I charged the cleaning fee and kept driving. By 2 a.m., the requests were slowing down. I was thinking about calling it a night, heading home, counting my earnings. Then my phone pinged, new ride request, pickup location, Oak Hill Cemetery. Drop-off, an address I didn't recognize, about 20 minutes away. I stared at the screen. A cemetery, at 2:47 a.m. on Halloween. I almost declined. But the fare showed a 2.5x surge multiplier, and I needed the money. I accepted. The cemetery gates were open when I arrived, just slightly, like someone had pushed them apart and left them. My headlights illuminated the road leading into the cemetery grounds, and standing about 50 feet inside, just at the edge of my headlight range, was a figure in white. I checked the app. Passenger name, Morgan. No photo, no rating history. I honked lightly. The figure started walking toward my car. As she got closer, I could see it was a woman in a white dress. Not a costume dress, a wedding dress. Full-length, traditional, with a long veil covering her face. The dress was stained, dark stains across the bodice and skirt. In the harsh glare of my headlights, the stains looked black. She opened the back door and got in without speaking. "Hi, Morgan?" I said, trying to sound casual. No response. She settled into the back seat, the dress rustling. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The veil obscured her face completely. I couldn't see any features, just white fabric and shadow underneath. "Okay, so the address is on Fairview Street?" I confirmed, checking the app. Still no response. "All right, well, let me know if you need anything." I put the car in drive and headed toward the cemetery gates. The whole situation felt wrong. Every instinct told me to stop the car, cancel the ride, tell her to get out. But she wasn't doing anything threatening. She was just sitting there, silent, still. As we drove through residential neighborhoods, I kept checking the mirror. She hadn't moved, not once. She sat perfectly upright, hands folded in her lap, veil obscuring her face. She didn't look at her phone, didn't adjust her dress, didn't shift position. "So, Halloween party?" I asked, trying to break the silence. Nothing. "Rough night?" Nothing. I gave up trying to make conversation and focused on driving. But the silence in the car was oppressive, thick. I turned on the radio. Static, all stations, just static. I turned it off. 10 minutes into the drive, I smelled something, floral, overpowering, like funeral flowers. Lilies, maybe. It was so strong it made my eyes water. "Sorry, do you have perfume on?" I asked. I'm kind of sensitive to smells. No answer. But when I checked the rearview mirror, she had tilted her head slightly, like she was listening. I cracked my window. The fresh air helped, but the smell didn't fully dissipate. 15 minutes in, I glanced at the mirror again and froze. She was closer, not just leaning forward, sitting in the middle seat now, right behind me. I hadn't heard her move, hadn't felt the car shift. "Hey, could you stay in your original seat?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Safety thing." She didn't move back. Just stayed there, right behind me, close enough that I could hear her breathing. Slow, rhythmic, too steady. I considered pulling over, ending the ride. But we were on a dark road now. No houses, just trees on both sides. The GPS said 5 more minutes. I drove faster. The app's map showed the destination approaching. A residential neighborhood, normal looking on the satellite view. I pulled onto Fairview Street, checking house numbers. "It should be coming up on the left," I said. Then the GPS started glitching. The map spun, recalibrated, zoomed in and out. The destination marker jumped around the screen. The address changed. First 247 Fairview, then 274, then 427. Which house is it?" I asked. For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, raspy, like she hadn't used it in a long time. "There is no house." I looked at the street. She was right. The address the app showed, 999 Fairview Street, didn't exist. The street numbers jumped from 847 to 1003. There was a gap in the numbering, and in that gap was just an empty lot. Overgrown grass, no foundation, no mailbox, nothing. "I don't understand," I said. "On the app says, this is where it was," she said. "Before." "Before what?" "Before the fire." I pulled to a stop at the empty lot, turned around to face her. "Look, I don't know what this is, but..." The back seat was empty. She was gone. The door hadn't opened. I hadn't heard anything. She had just vanished. My hands started shaking. I checked the app. The ride was still active, still showing Morgan as my passenger, but the back seat was completely empty. I got out of the car and looked around. The street was deserted. No lights on in the nearby houses, no movement, no sound except wind rustling the overgrown grass of the empty lot. I called rideshare support, got a bot, tried to explain the situation. The bot kept giving scripted responses about how to end a ride properly. I ended the ride manually. 5-star rating auto-selected. A tip notification popped up. Morgan has tipped you $50. I drove home. I didn't accept any more rides. I sat in my apartment with all the lights on until the sun came up. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. I'd been tired. Maybe she got out while I was looking at the GPS. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing from exhaustion and Halloween anxiety. But then I checked my photos. My phone has a dash cam app that automatically records during rides. I'd forgotten it was running. I opened the footage from that night and watched. The video showed me pulling up to the cemetery. The woman getting in the back seat. Everything looked normal at first. But as I watched more closely, I realized something was wrong. In the rearview mirror, the one visible in the video, there was no reflection of her. The back seat appeared empty the entire time, but the car's suspension showed weight in the back. The seatbelt was buckled, hovering in midair on the video, fastened around nothing. And her voice, when she spoke, came through clearly on the audio. But her lips never moved under the veil. I zoomed in on the frames just before she disappeared. There was one clear shot, maybe half a second, where the veil shifted slightly and I could see underneath. There was no face, just darkness, empty space where a head should be. I reported the incident to rideshare support. They closed my ticket with a generic response. We take safety seriously. This ride has been reviewed. But 2 days later, I got a message through the app from Morgan. It said, "Thank you for the ride. I've been waiting a long time for someone to take me home." I blocked the profile, deleted the app. It reinstalled itself that night, and the messages kept coming. "You were very kind. Not many people stop at the cemetery. I've been trying to get home since 1994. I finally responded, "What do you want from me?" The reply came immediately. "Nothing now, you already helped, but I wanted you to know the truth about where you took me, about what I am." "What are you?" "I'm Morgan Hayes. I died on October 31st, 1994, my wedding day. House fire, 9999 Fairview Street. I've been trying to get back ever since, but I could never find a way. Until you." I researched the name, found an obituary. Morgan Hayes, age 24, died in a house fire on her wedding day in 1994. The house was on Fairview Street. The lot was never rebuilt. "Why me?" I typed. "Because you stopped, because you're kind, because you listen." Then another message. "And because now that you've taken me home, I can rest. But before I go, I wanted to warn you. You need to check your messages, the other ones, the ones you've been ignoring." I didn't understand what she meant until I scrolled through my old messages. There were dozens of them. From passengers I'd driven over the previous 6 months. Messages I didn't remember receiving, messages that had appeared after rides I didn't remember giving. All sent at 2:47 a.m. All from pickup locations that were cemeteries, abandoned hospitals, accident sites. All from people with no profile photos, no rating history, no visible faces in my dashcam footage. I'd been driving the dead home for months, and I hadn't even noticed. The last message from Morgan came through at 2:47 a.m. on November 1st. "Thank you again. I'm free now, but they're not. The others, they're still waiting, still hoping someone will take them home. And now that you've done it once, they know they can find you. Be careful, Ryan. They'll keep requesting rides and you'll keep accepting. Because you're kind, and because some part of you knows they need help. Just remember, not all of them want to rest. Some of them have been waiting too long. Some of them have forgotten how to let go. I tried to delete the app again. It won't stay deleted. Every few days a ride request comes through, always at 2:47 a.m. Always from a cemetery or somewhere similar. Last night I got one from the hospital where my dad died 3 years ago. The passenger name was his, same spelling, no photo. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. My hand hovering over accept. I declined it, but it appeared again 5 minutes later, and again 5 minutes after that. It's still pending on my screen right now. Pickup location, County Hospital, West Wing. Passenger, Michael Reynolds. Destination, unknown. That's my dad's name. That's where he died, and I don't know what to do, because part of me wants to accept it, wants to see if it's really him, wants to drive him wherever he needs to go. But Morgan's last message keeps echoing in my head. Not all of them want to rest. Some of them have forgotten how to let go. What if I accept the ride and it's not my dad? What if it's something wearing his name, using his memory, waiting for someone desperate enough to stop asking questions, or worse? What if it is him, and he's been waiting 3 years for me to pick him up and I keep declining? The request just came through again. 4th time tonight. The app is overriding my decline responses now. It's forcing me to accept. My car keys are in my hand. It's 2:45 a.m. The pickup time says 2:47. I have 2 minutes to decide, and I can hear my car starting in the driveway. I didn't turn it on, but the engine is running and the doors are unlocking. I think I'm going to go. I think I have to, because he's my dad, and if there's any chance it's really him, I can't leave him waiting. I just hope I come back.